Welcome back to One Piece Explained. The latest chapter is packed with new powers and new reveals that really take the Elbaph arc to the next level, and I can't wait to talk about it, so let's get right into it with chapter 1143, Holy Knights. We pick back up at the Walrus School and find Saul running after the sleepwalking students. The nightmare manifestations from the previous chapter seem to have already made their way to the campus, as you can spot the ghost with the hat, as well as the storm cloud. There are a few others that are a bit harder to make out, perhaps some that were not even in that double-page spread from the last chapter. Now we get the names of two other students in addition to Ylva, but it's not entirely clear who is who. Matt could be any of the boys that we saw, though with Ronya being a feminine Scandinavian name, I would guess that she's the girl with the headphones or earmuffs that we see here. Despite Mr. Wolf's warning not to touch the students, Saul goes to grab one only to get his hand pierced by some invisible thorns. We'll talk more about this ability in just a minute, but first we have to talk about this new transponder snail, or pill bug actually. Anj relays the situation at the Walrus School back to the folks at the Western Village as we get another shot of the nightmare monsters in the back. This wing perhaps belongs to the bird that we saw in that spread from the last chapter, and the serpent-like creature from the earlier page can be seen as well. This message is being communicated via transponder pillbug, or Dengo Mushi, a play on the Japanese word for pillbug, Dango Mushi. This is not to be confused as a type of transponder snail or Den Mushi, and seems to be as large as regular-sized races. It's said to only work in Elbaph, and it's always cool to see transponder snail spin-offs in these isolated nations, just as we saw with the Smales or smart snails in Wano. This does make me wonder though about the snow transponder snail that we saw earlier in the arc. If these transponder pillbugs are the native method of communication in Elbaph, then how does the snail factor into things? Could it have been brought from outside the country, and who would have been the one to bring it to Loki? It should also be noted that this specific snail is relatively large compared to the snails that we've seen in the series, with it not appearing minuscule in relation to Loki, who is around 3 times larger than normal giants. Given that it's actually so big, maybe the snail is native to Elbaph after all. There's a lot of mystery surrounding this plot beat with Mosa and Loki, and I'm looking forward to getting it addressed once again. In this panel of the Western Village receiving the news, you can spot a woman angrily yelling that her son is at the Walrus School. This may be the mother of the student who said he feared his mom the most, as evidenced by their similar hairstyle and clothes. We also learn that Ylva is a descendant of Yorl, being his granddaughter's granddaughter. This adds a bit more context to Jarl's line from the other chapter about liking older women, as this means he has or did have a wife at some point. We also learn that the children are heading down branch route 8, which of course means that there are at least 8 notable branches in this section of the tree. We learned in a previous chapter that one of the branches had been severed, which would add up to the magic number 9, the same number of realms found in Yggdrasil, the world tree in Norse mythology. I'm not sure if this is where Oda is going with this one, especially since you can see more than 9 branches in some of the depictions of Elbaph, but I just wanted to make note of that. Now, in response to the fire breaking out, we get the introduction of a group of firefighters. Their time in the chapter is very brief, much like the Igumi Fire Department that we saw in Wano, but it's nice to see these sorts of everyday occupations exist in these countries. We had also previously seen Mr. 5 as a firefighter when Miss Golden Week revealed their lifelong dreams. Unfortunately, the firefighting Svar is quickly dealt with by a Draugr, though this is not the same one that we saw in the previous chapter, as that one had long vertical horns and spiked hair and wielded some sort of polearm, whereas here we see the skeleton warrior has curved horns, a sword on its back, a shield on its arm, and what appears to be a flame on its backside. We then check back in with the perpetrators of this attack and find the 3 holy knights partaking in some fine dining. Behind them you can spot some of the nightmares, including the Nidhogger, the bear, and what may be the ghoul with the hat once again. Summer basks in the pain caused to Mr. Wolf and Saul by what we learn are his devil fruit abilities, the Thorn fruit. This makes a lot of sense and aligns with the speculation surrounding him ever since his introduction when we saw the spiked guard on his sword and the rose on his chest. His line in the previous chapter about how knowing love is to wound one another gets expounded upon here, as Summers maniacally goes on about the pain that will come to the parents and loved ones of the students when they can't embrace their children. He seems to have this twisted fixation on love and the pain involved in the process, which is somewhat unique from the standard sadistic tendencies that we see among the social dragons. I have to wonder if he himself is even capable of such a thing as love, given what we know about social dragons and their treatment of their partners. I'm interested in seeing how this character plays out, and which characters in particular that he ends up interacting with, as we've already had the value of love get spotlighted earlier in this arc with Gaban, and I've spoken at length on the channel about Sanji and the power of love, and what that could mean as a real source of strength in the series. Now, this fruit is somewhat reminiscent of Miss Doublefinger's Spike fruit, though that allowed her to turn her body into spikes, while this one seems to allow the user to just create and manipulate these thorns, even to the point of making them invisible. This also isn't the first time that we've seen someone from the world government make use of thorns for combat, as Khalifa was initially shown using a thorn whip before eating the bubble fruit. The more interesting reveal here, however, is that of Killingham's devil fruit, the mythical dragon fruit model Kirin. Its classification as a dragon fruit is particularly interesting since Kirins have been likened to various creatures from dragons to giraffes to deer across various cultures. A celestial dragon having eaten a dragon fruit is certainly interesting, and it should also be noted that this is the first dragon fruit in the series that is not an ancient type, like the dinosaurs that we saw throughout Onigashima, which are considered dragon fruits because of the Japanese word for dinosaurs, kyoryu, meaning fearful dragon. What's also atypical is that he is referred to as a dream manifesting man. Throughout the series, we are often introduced to devil fruit users as being an X-human, where X is the foremost power of the fruit, as we saw in this chapter with Summers being a thorn man, or even earlier in the arc with Gunko being an arrow woman. With Zoans, this is typically the name of the animal, but I believe we've yet to have this sort of description for a proper mythical Zoan, until now. The closest thing would be the Gum Gum fruit, which turns the user into a rubber man, with a description detailing the specific paramecia-like power of the fruit and not the Zoan aspect, and that's sort of similar to what we have here, with the fruit's special properties being described as opposed to the Zoan transformation itself. Now let's talk about these powers in particular. From the last chapter, we surmised that Killingham could put other people to sleep, but it wasn't necessarily clear if the manifestation of the nightmares was his doing. As it turns out, Killingham has the ability to take anything someone is dreaming about and make it into reality. It seems this is often done by putting the target to sleep, using the sort of ray or beam-like power, visually similar to things that we've seen before like Foxy's slow beam, and then he is capable of reaching into their dreams, represented as a cloud that you would see in cartoons, and simply pull things out of them. From this interaction with Summers, it seems he can also wake them back up via verbal command. It seems this entire dining table setup, as well as the food, were all conjured by Killingham's abilities, and while the food that gets produced has great taste, it has no calories, which means it provides no actual energy. This is sort of a flip on the cook fruit, which could turn objects into food that provided nourishment, but had terrible taste. And this limitation on the dream food is quite needed, as it means Killingham can't just solve the food shortage in Mary-Joie with his powers. It's also useful in that it probably means that he can't pull out fully working devil fruits from people's dreams either, or anything in that sort of realm. There do seem to be other limitations or constraints as well, such as the dream manifestation being subject to the dreamer's experiences or imagination. In this chapter, Killingham prompts Summers to think of Salt and then puts him to sleep, which apparently means that Salt is on his mind to the point of dreaming about it. When Killingham pulls it out, he notes that it is Asspatch rock salt, presumably just salt sourced from a specific region in the world. This informs us that the manifestation was subject to Summers' prototypical or most well-known idea of the prompt, as opposed to some generic iteration. And we see this more explicitly with the nightmares, referred to as sleep tids in this chapter. Now the English translation calls them sleep tids, which is likely a portmanteau of sleep and cryptids, but in the Japanese, they are referred to as MMA or Muma, using the kanji that reads Dream Demon. All of these feature a paintbrush-like quality to them, since they were in the forefront of the children's minds from the drawing activity they did earlier in the day. Not only that, but their designs are clearly informed by what the children think the beings look like in their head, as opposed to their objective appearance. While the food produced by the fruit's power is edible and has taste, it not retaining any of its other inherent properties may also speak to some of the limitations of the sleep tids. For example, the storm cloud we saw in the last chapter may not have the ability to shoot lightning. Those bolts of lightning may actually be more like physical appendages, since we see it in the same configuration in this chapter. Similarly, I have to imagine that this version of Nika and Loki don't necessarily have the same power sets as their inspiration. This ability is a bit similar to what we've seen from Luffy's Gear 5th, where he can spawn these accessories to aid in his techniques, such as goggles or paint. Here, Luffy can generate these things from his own imagination, whereas Killingham is likely unable to pull things out from his own dreams while he is asleep. Also, while Killingham's dream manifestations have physical relevance and impact on the environment, Luffy's manifestations have mostly just been for style purposes, as he still had to create the bat out of a nearby tree. Killingham's powers have a lot of potential in a series like One Piece, where characters' dreams are held in such high importance, and especially at this point in the series. Earlier in the arc, we were told that the mural we saw may have been nothing more than a child's dream, and we're kind of experiencing the nightmare version of that in Elbaph right now. I'm excited to see Killingham try his powers out on other characters as well, such as Usopp, who is notoriously afraid of many different things, but who has also achieved his dream, as stated by Nami. Perhaps that is why Usopp and Brook have been written to be so intoxicated, so that their dreams can be brought to life once they pass out. Usopp having to grapple with a twisted version of his dream would be some interesting stuff, and maybe that's how he becomes the savior of Elbaph after all. There's also Luffy, who we know has a specific dream that we have not yet learned of. Maybe we'll get a hint of it in this arc with Killingham's powers. There's a lot Oda could do with this. We also get some more details of the Holy Knight's plans as Gunko explains that the kids are headed straight from the Walrus School to the port by the Western Village, which we saw when the crew initially arrived to the Sunworld. Also behind them, you can spot more of the sleep tits, including the Dragger from the last chapter, what looks to be the Nidhogger, and Nika. It seems they plan to steal one of the giant ships to take the kids back to Mary Joie, but to get down to the sea, they'll need to take a painter to draw the rainbow, as we saw earlier in the arc. Summers complains that this game is going to be too easy and how they're practically already done with their mission, but Gunko reassures him that the hardest part is coming, as we learn that she is aware of the Straw Hat's presence on the island after seeing their ship in the port. We leave this scene with the realization that the fire has already spread to the path the children are walking on, but it seems Gunko is not concerned as they can always send more children down. It's interesting that this abduction was limited to 9 students as opposed to the whole school. It's also not entirely clear if these kids are meant to be merely hostages or if there's some greater purpose for them. The Holy Knight's initial goal was to take control of Elbaph by acquiring Loki's strength, so if their backup plan was to do so by taking children back to Mary Joie, I wonder if there's going to be something where they turn the children into soldiers for their own cause somehow. We'll have to see. The final part of this chapter finds us revisiting the release of Loki, who was surrounded by the new giant warrior pirates with the monster trio. Loki threatens the safety of Elbaph, but only in between huffs and wheezes, letting us into his current state. He also mentions that the others cannot even lift Ragnir, something that we've been wondering about for quite a while. It would explain why they imprisoned Loki with it on his back, but it's still not clear if the inability to wield it is just a matter of physical strength or if there's some special property of the hammer itself. In the face of Loki's threats, Luffy claims responsibility, just as he said he would, and Hajrudin mentions that Luffy will get electrocuted, but of course, we know that Luffy has a natural immunity to lightning. Zoro and Luffy recognize Loki's bluff, and with this, we get the strange introduction of a somewhat new technique, the Gum Gum arm balloon. On the surface, this looks a lot like the Gum Gum giant pistol, but in practice, it appears to just be Luffy simply inflating his arm to great proportions and making slight contact with Loki. Conceptually, it is similar to the Gum Gum balloon, but instead of making his torso larger, it's his arm. It's also reminiscent of Luffy's bone balloon technique, where he would blow air into his thumb and inflate that way instead of sucking in air through his mouth, though at this point in Luffy's mastery over his abilities, he no longer needs to take in air, or at the very least, he's not shown doing so. This slight contact with Loki is enough to end it all as he falls forward on his face in a panel that vaguely parallels Luffy taking down Hajrudin back in Dressrosa. Zoro explains that given his wounds, he was already near death. Normally, a line like this would not be much to blink at, but considering Zoro's run-in with that Grim Reaper during Wano, it makes me wonder if he's somehow more in tune with death or something like that. Luffy manages to convince the giants to let Loki live, while Roto wonders about the one who attacked Loki in the first place, seemingly connecting the Shanks look-alike to this scene. Gerd mentions that it will take months for Loki to heal from his wounds, which does beg the question if we'll ever actually get to see Loki fully powered in this arc. Given where his character seems to be going at the end of the chapter, I could see a world where he's not in full capacity until the final war. We also get confirmation that Loki's Hordens are indeed real, just as we had suspected upon learning that Harold was a giant with ancient giant blood, and this brings us to a brief flashback to Loki and Hajrudin's childhood. Now recall that Hajrudin was 18 years old when Loki was born, but with Loki being at least a big toddler in this panel, he must be several years older. Loki does not match his silhouetted appearance as told to us by the giants of the Western Village, where he was supposedly 10 years old, so I guess it's possible that Loki was older than 10 in this panel, making Hajrudin at least 28. Either way, it seems Harold still had his horns by this point, making me wonder just when exactly he decided to remove them and pursue peace for Elbaph. His face is also shadowed, despite us having seen him in his portrait, so there may be more going on with his appearance at this time. Also of note, Loki is seen with his eyes bandaged at this early age, confirming that this is something beyond his punishment. He also wields a Kanabo club, which further plays into his ancient giant heritage and the Oni motif. It's interesting that there is a crowd cheering on Loki as he bullies Hajrudin, seemingly of older giants. This could be his band of followers that I had been speculating as his potential crew when he set out to sea, perhaps even the same group that we saw silhouetted alongside him when he courted Lola. Remembering all of the pain Loki caused to him and his loved ones, Hajrudin goes to take Loki's life, only to be met with the revelation that Loki did not kill Harold out of malice, something that many of us had been anticipating for months now. It's not entirely clear if this means Loki did not kill Harold for the reason everyone thinks, or if he didn't kill Harold at all, but in either case, I'm excited that we're finally at this point where we can get some truth to this ongoing mystery. We've been speculating on the channel for a while now that Jarl had been bending the truth to preserve Harold's image, and that Harold had potentially gotten under the world government's influence, whether that was intentionally or by manipulation. We'll just have to see how close we are, but in the meantime, I'd love to know where your head is at. Do you think Loki really killed him, or is there more going on? I'm hoping that we get a big flashback sooner rather than later. As always, you can find all my weekly manga breakdowns in the playlist in the description, and if you made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching, stay safe, and I hope to see you in the next one.